Good morning, everyone. How are you? Welcome. Happy Thursday. You are in our series, our fourth webinar in our series for county approval and provider certification, simplifying the standards designed for those wanting a deeper dive into the standards. 441 of you have registered for today's webinar. We're so excited. Our community continues to show up and gain the information that we have put together for you that fills my heart with so much joy. We would love for you to introduce yourself in the chat, name, role, county, and our icebreaker this morning is, what's the last thing you put together without reading the instructions? I do not have that superpower and I have to read the instructions, but I have two very amazing loved ones that give me the side eye every time. I'm like, don't you want to read the instructions? Like, no, I don't. We'll give you a moment for your technology to come on board. We love all the cameras on and seeing all your faces. Laura, good morning. Mary, how are you? So many familiar faces. Melissa, Kristen, so happy you're Daisy. Lassen County, we love you. Good morning. My name is Donnie Lynch, and I am with the Resource Center for Family Focused Practice. We are so pleased that you're all here with us today. We're going to take a few minutes just to get our technology going. We would love for you to introduce yourself, your name, your role, your county, and today's icebreaker is, what is the last thing you put together without the instructions? Directions are the way to go. Rachel's, yes, ma'am, 100%. I can't do it. And even then, I put something on backwards. Tamara came into my room one day and I put together a dresser and she's like, is that drawer upside down? I was like, dang it. So I had to take the whole thing apart. It was terrible. This is our fourth webinar in our series for county approval and provider certification, simplifying the standards. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have an incredible presenter this morning. Our own personal Rebecca Cox is here to provide you with all of the information this morning. I cannot wait for you all to experience all of the information she has provided for you. So we will start with some introductions and then we'll dive right in. How's that sound? All right. Keep that comment in the chat. We want to see your name, your role, your county, and the icebreaker is, what is the last thing you put together without using the instructions? With that, my name is Donnie Lynch. I'm with the Resource Center for Family Focused Practice. I'm so happy to be here. I've been here almost 4 years. I've also been a parent partner supervisor, and I have lived experience. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Nancy. Are you still here, Nancy? Yeah, our director, Nancy Hafer. Oh, you're on mute.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Donna. Hi, everyone. Really nice to see you this morning. I'm Nancy Hafer, the director of the Resource Center for Family Focused Practice here at UC Davis. Really excited for all of this wraparound certification and county plan approval. Really excited to be here today and excited to see you all. Thanks, Donna.
Thanks, Nancy. And we're happy to have you in this space. Good to be here. All right, I'm going to pass it to Tamara. Tamara, good morning.
Hi, good morning. I'm Tamara Trejos with UC Davis, our CFFP, which is Resource Center for Family Focused Practice. I will be available in the chat if you need me, and I will be dropping resources as you hear them mentioned. And so if you miss it, you can side message me and I will drop it again.
Side quest, Tamara. All right, and Lizzie, come on in, Lizzie.
Thanks, Donna. Good morning, everybody. It's so lovely to be here in this crowd. My name is Lizzie Dembos. I work alongside Nancy and Donna and others from our team, Tamara, Rebecca. Happy to be here. And I was sharing, I got humbled recently with not following instructions with a piece of furniture. So I am an instruction follower now. I think that's important. So team instructions over here. Thanks, Donna.
Awesome. Thank you, Lizzie. Good morning. I would like to say, do some housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. We will send out a marketing email once the recording is on our website. Not only will the recording be there, but also all of the materials that we're dropping in today's webinar will be there as a companion for you to be able to download. So if anybody in your organization or county was unable to be here, that is a-okay. They'll be up on our website so they can view at a later time. Also, this morning, our presenter, Rebecca Cox, would like everybody to hold their questions until the end of the presentation. You can put your questions in the chat. We will grab them for you and then ask them during the Q&A. Or when we do it, open it up for Q&A, you can use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom bar, and then we'll invite you to come on in and ask your question. All right, with that, I am pleased to introduce Danny Gabry with the Family Center Practice Unit of the California Department of Social Services. Good morning, Danny.
Thanks, Donna. Hi, everybody. I'm Danny Gabry. As Donna said, manager of the Family Center Practice Unit, or soon to be renamed Wraparound and Integrated Practice Unit, I believe. So look for a rebrand for us coming soon to emphasize the importance of wraparound and the work that we do. And I want to introduce my team that's here today. For you that are on the county side, you all have an assigned wraparound coordinator. So that's my team. We are also partners with UC Davis Resource Center for Family Focused Practice on all things high fidelity wraparound. And we are very grateful for their partnership. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris first.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here and see you all here with this great attendance. Chris Betty is also is CDSS, currently the Family Center Practice Unit. Been with CDSS for, over 5 years now. So excited about this whole process, excited to hear and then for you all to learn more about the wraparound standards. And I think Kayla's here. So I'll kick it over to Kayla.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla Granderson, and I'm also with the Family Center Practice Unit. I've been here almost 4 years as well, and I'm your wraparound consultant and also all things peer. And then I'll go ahead and pass it to Janine.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Janine Lesueur, Family Center Practice Unit here at CDSS. I've been here 9 years, and I'm excited about all the growth in wraparound and all that we're doing. So just keep up the good work, and I think that's it from our team.
Yes, it is. Amy is in Europe, so we hope she's not thinking about us at all right now.
Right.
That's our team. As you can tell, I'm the most junior team, or maybe you don't know because you don't know me, but I've been here about 2.5 years. So I am the newest member of the wraparound team at DSS, but I am delighted to be here, and I will pass it over to Rebecca, who is going to be our main speaker today.
Thanks, Danny. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Super glad you're here. I love to watch the numbers go. As a presenter, I'm like, ooh, the numbers are going up. Oh no. But as a wraparound person, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love how many people are showing up for our webinars, our 4th one, and then just seeing those numbers increase. So thank you all for being here, for joining us this morning. Hope you guys are excited about wraparound as we are. And we're going to talk a little bit today about simplifying the standards. My hope for all of you is just that I can make the standards process a little bit easier. So I've been with the Resource Center for almost 4 years now, and I've actually been on the updating the wraparound standards project since long before that. This has been a very long time in the making. And I'll talk about a little bit about like what our process was to get here and some of the work that went into these. There's zero chance I'm gonna be able to like roll through every standard and give you all the answers, right? Not only would that not like take 2 hours, that would take like all the days. We can't do that. But if I can make this process easier, these standards a little bit simpler to understand, then our goal here is met. All right. I do want to start off with just this reminder, like we're here because an ACL came out. So this is in response to that aftercare ACL and BHIN. That ACL established statewide minimum standards for family-based aftercare services. So I want to be really clear as we're talking about standards today and certification and approval and submitting in the portal. When we're referencing those things, we're talking about for aftercare wraparound. This ACL did introduce the California High Fidelity Wraparound Model. So you'll hear that term as well. That is outlined in the California Wraparound Standards that came out with this ACL. But by and large today, when we're talking about wraparound, when we're talking about the standards and what we're uploading, we're talking about specific to aftercare. if you have questions on this, if you haven't seen our other webinars, please go back to our website. Our webinars are posted. We have some recorded ones, and we have one that walks you through kind of like what the ACL is about and what it does and doesn't do. And it's joint with CDSS and DHCS. So you'll hear from both of them on that one. So if you haven't seen that webinar, go ahead and, after this one's over, take a minute, go watch it, kick back, get your popcorn, and take some notes, because I think it's really helpful to do that first. All right, so here's our goals for today. As I said, I'm not gonna be able to take you through all the standards. I'm not gonna give you all the answers, but I am gonna talk a little bit about like, why are the standards organized this way? How do we read and approach these standards? We'll look at some examples of some standards and what the requirements are, and I'll talk a little bit about them. And then we'll talk about how this is really a tool for wraparound success. So we didn't just develop these standards to torture you, we promise. We developed these because we think it's really, really helpful. And this is the way to do wraparound and make it successful. And I'll talk about that a bit more, but just putting out there of like, there's method to the madness. And my hope is to pull back that curtain, decrease the madness, show some of the method. A super wise man once said to me, his name is Manuel Lua. He was one of our presenters from last week, the webinars. He said, always start with the why. And so this is for trainings. I think this is true of just about everything we do. And when he taught it to me, he was talking about trainings. So why are we doing this? Why are we having these standards? And why did we choose the particular standards we chose? I'm gonna talk about that a little as we go. So I'm gonna start out with just really like, why in the world are we doing this? And why did we choose what we chose and put what we put in standards? All right, but first, small digression, like whose idea was this? These standards were developed by the California Wraparound Steering Committee. So long ago in 2019, that feels like a million years ago, CDSS, Daniel Wilson were like, you know what, we have an idea. So they recognized that there had been a lot of drift in California, right? And that wraparound in one county with one provider looked completely different than wraparound from another county and another provider. And they said, you know what, we should address this. Let's get together and let's talk about what is wraparound and what does this look like. And so they formed Wraparound Steering Committee, and that steering committee has been made up of experts across the state. So I want to take just a second to acknowledge those experts. And how about if you're on the Wraparound Steering Committee and you're in this webinar, why don't you use your raise hand feature real quick and just pop in, shout out, say hi, use the actual raise hand so we can see you. I'm putting you on blast. Hold your camera ready. And they might not be here because they also know the standards.
I was gonna say, come on, folks. There's one for you, Rebecca. Give me a break.
There we go.
There you go. Get in here.
I am 0% surprised that it's Kim and Sharon right here because they're here for everything. There's Daisy. All right.
Thank you, Daisy. They're being sneaky for you, Rebecca.
They are. I didn't front load them at all. Well, because I just got the idea right now. This is how I roll. Hi, welcome to the madness. So those folks on your screen and many more have come together and met painstakingly going through these standards and looking at them line by line by line and talking about what is wraparound, what do we expect, what's realistic, what helps and supports wraparound and brings it to light. These are representatives from small, tiny counties to very large counties, providers. We have some that are involved with adoptions wraparound, wraparound funded by AAP. We have lived experience on our team. So we really committed to making this like diverse group of people to really get through it and work through these standards and compare them to the national standards. So we had wraparound standards prior to this. In 2015, we had published wraparound standards. The California Wraparound Advisory Committee had published those standards. And as we were meeting, we just identified like, it's time for an update. It's time for a refresh. Let's go through these and really make them, we hope, more accessible, more clear, and more useful for us to develop that statewide standardized wraparound model. In addition, we did a whole bunch of work groups. So these are our OG work groups. They're not the only work groups we had. For example, we also had a tribal work group that did a lot of work of taking the standards that we've developed and say, what does this mean for tribes and how do we lift up and support tribes and tribal youth in the standards? We also had our steering committee made several small groups. Like, for example, we did enhanced care management. We sat and we talked about that, and talked about how does that fit with wraparound, how do we put some guidance around that. But these are the original work groups that we did way back when. We met once a month for like 2 years and we started going through this. And I outlined on here some of our deliverables. So you can see on here, we had the out of county matrix, the funding matrix, we had contracting guidance. We developed a California wraparound theory of change. A CQI pilot came out of one of the work groups that's currently ongoing and informing our statewide data plan. And these work groups were led by the wraparound steering committee members. So CDSS came alongside as well and said they participated, they joined, they supported, and they had the wonderful insight and ability to then put steering committee members at the helm of facilitation and planning. So it truly was this community-based, peer-to-peer, let's develop this together, right? And I highlighted some of the sections that came out. So these work groups, realistically, they informed all of the standards. It's not just any one standard that we pulled from the work group. But there's a few things that came out very specifically where the deliverables that these work groups came up with directly informed our standards work. And in some cases, for example, like the data and outcomes, they pretty much wrote the standards and then we adjusted them slightly over time. But these are the people, right? And so many of you here, I'm sure we're also on these work groups. And for those people, again, just thank you for your hard work, your support, your dedication to that wrap process and getting it going, because it was a lot. All right. So I said I was going to talk about why, and then I immediately talked about who. So let's go backwards to like, but really why? Why are we doing this? Why this ACL? Why high fidelity wraparound? And really, because good wraparound leads to better outcomes for youth and families, right? So we know that wraparound done to fidelity has better outcomes than traditional services and supports for youth and families, right? We know that when wraparound's not done to fidelity, it's not much better than anything else we can give youth and families. And we also know that we were kind of all over the place across California, right? And so we are looking to address that, right? And just going back, if you were at the webinars last week, Manuel Alua talked about some of the tensions you might feel as a wraparound provider of like, oh, why are we doing this? So you might be looking at this picture and you're like, that's not a boy playing fun peekaboo. That's a boy going, my parents are driving me crazy. I'm exasperated, right? If you're in that camp, again, we didn't develop the standards to make this a torturous process and to make your lives harder. We truly wanted to uplift and support wraparound across California. And have those outcomes for youth and families. And we will always and forever, I know our RCFFP team, our CDSS team are very much aligned, and our DHCS team are very much aligned. And this is about youth and families, right? It is about youth and families getting the services and supports that they need, no matter who their provider is and what area of California they live in, right? And so again, just building that vision of alignment. And know that you guys have seen a lot of stuff coming out. I think it's exciting to me that wraparound seems to always grow and expand across our state, right? There's always something new going on in wraparound in our state, nationally, across the world, internationally, right? Wraparound just grows and grows and grows and grows. And so as that grows and grows and grows and grows, we want to be sure and we want to be clear about what are we talking about? When we say wraparound, what does that mean and what are we talking about? All right. With that lens in mind, let's jump into a little bit of like, how in the world do I do this? How do I think about these standards? How do I get involved with these standards? And what does this look like? I'm going to call attention. Tamara's going to drop our standards and requirement PDF document in the chat. You might want to pull that up and open it as we go in and we do some more of this as we talk through, because I'm going to show specific standards, and I'm going to apologize in advance because the text is real tiny because it's real hard to fit these screenshots on a slide. I did screenshot the portal directly so you can see how these things are done in the portal. And so the PDF document will look a little different. It's more plain and boring and less fun to navigate than the actual wraparound portal. But I know for many of you, since we are asking, one profile per provider and per county. There's many of you that can't actually open the portal and follow along with me. If you do have portal access, open it up, follow along, right? If you don't, there's that PDF document, refer to it. And so we'll dive in. Here are the steps that I think you should do. I created an acronym for you. So graph, spelled wrong, graph, right? I want you to leave this webinar remembering I need to graph, right? So in graph, we're talking about gathering, we're talking about reading, analyzing, and filling. And so I'll tell you what each of these mean as we go on, but we'll think about graph. And this is really like, here's a roadmap. Let's create a roadmap for you to be successful in reading these standards, working through these standards, and understanding what it is you're supposed to do. All right, so we'll start with the G, gather. So we're gathering your people. Whether you're a county or provider, your approval and certification starts with getting the right people to the table. There is not a single person in this webinar in the state of California, I would guess, that can do this on their own. There's a ton that went into the standards in building them, and there's going to be a ton that goes into implementing them. And it's a waste of time to like try to dive in by yourself, right? You need your people. And I would start there. I would start by looking at your county, looking at your organization, and say, who do we need at this table? And how do we get them here, right? For counties, we are asking for your joint plan. So we need you to collaborate with behavioral health, child welfare, and probation. And you're probably going to need to collaborate with your providers a bit as well, right? So getting those people together and talking about it. And if you're a provider, same thing. You need to look at who's in my organization and do I need to collaborate with the county on things? And should we have conversations with the county? If you're a statewide provider, what are those entities across the state that I need? Who are those people? All right, so we'll talk about this more in the context of one of our actual wraparound standards. So Richard Connect last week did a great job of talking about that community leadership team and talking about the importance of getting your ILT involved. And I just want to highlight that again, right? You have to organize, it's in the standards that you have to organize a community leadership team that communicates with the ILT. I would start thinking about this now. I would start here in the standards of who's my people in the county? Who do I need at the table? The same people that are in your community leadership teams and your ILTs are probably the people who need to be involved in the planning and delivery of the wraparound, your wraparound services and meeting these wraparound standards, right? So get together, start going out for coffee, pull some meetings together, whatever it's going to take, bring them together. Providers, you're not actually required to build this community leadership team, but you're required to identify someone to participate on it. So start thinking about that now, right? Think about who has your wraparound expertise, who can show up in these spaces and speak to what your program needs, where are your challenges, where are your successes, and what is this going to look like? Start pulling out, identifying those people now. And if you're statewide, you need one of those people in every county you work in, right? So why not get all of those people together? In my mind, I'm like, all right, cool. Who's going to be on my community leadership teams when the county identifies them? Who's going to participate? All right, I'm going to bring all those people together in every county, and they're going to start working on the certification process. You have a built-in team right here. I don't think they can do it alone. I think they're going to need all the different levels of your organization. I'm talking like you might need to talk to a facilitator about how do we do this and what does this look like? And you might need to talk to someone right at the top and say, how do we change this policy? How do we maximize our funding to make sure we do this, right? We're going to have those conversations. And so you want to get those people together. All right. Quickly, since I brought up the standard around 7.2, I'll give you a second just to read these community leadership requirements as well. Again, this is that part where I'm going to have lots of tiny words on slides, because welcome to certification and wraparound. It's either have 800 slides or have tiny text. So open them up, read them in your things. You'll see in here, we have an opportunity for you to say, counties are going to do this, providers do this. Most of the standards are done. So counties and providers are filling out the exact same thing. And you'll notice that in the portal, you'll notice that for the requirements, we're talking about the same standards for counties and the same standards for providers. We're doing this because we want to build alignment, right? We want you all on the same page, right? And that's one of our steering committees just constant conversation is how do we make sure everybody's on the same page? How do we spread the wealth and information? How do we build alignment? How do we make sure that we're not getting each other's ways, right? So how do we come at this together? So this is just an FYI, so you can see we're talking about there's spots where providers are going to say, no, that's a county thing. I can't actually do that. We try to think those through for you. We put them on there. Same thing for AAP. So there's times where there's spots where AAP wraparound, you're not under the standards required to do this, and you click it. All right, after you have your people together, you're going to read everything. And we mean everything. So if you're like, yes, everything, start reading. Get comfy, get cozy. This is me. I have a very similar rainbow hammock in my backyard. This is where I would be doing. I'd be printing, or I'd be taking my laptop. I'd be sitting in the sun, and I would just be reading. Or grab your coffee. Start a book club. If your organization doesn't have a book club, it's a great time to start. And your first book can be the ACL and how stinking long it is, right? Pull it together and start reading. You want to make sure that everybody that's going to be involved in doing the approval and certification and filling out that form actually has read all of these things, because there's so much information. I don't know I've ever seen so much information come out at once about any one thing the state has done ever. Wraparound, outside of wraparound, this is huge. And so you're going to need to know it. And there's just no good way to think about the standards and talk about the standards if you haven't read all of the things. So start out by reading. And when we say like, read what? This is my order of operations that I'd go. I'm pretty sure this is a little bit different actually than like if I were to ask Donna or Tamara or Lizzie how they would go about it, they'd probably give it slightly different. But this is my order and how I think about it. I would start with the ACL and read all, like, what is it, 40 pages of it? I would read all 40 pages of that ACL. And then I'd move to the standards and requirements. So the standards are in the ACL. The requirements actually shows the requirements that are in the portal to check it off. Those requirements are just us saying like, what works? How do we operationalize the standards so we can actually see what it is? It shouldn't be new and added onto. It's how do we understand these standards, and what do we look for? What do we know to say that yes, that standard's being implemented? Yes, it's good to go. So reading every single one of those dang standards too. Again, another huge document. Sorry, not sorry. It's too much information, but it's needed all the information. I would then move to reading those instructions. So we can drop in the chat. We have different instructions for counties and providers just to help with the clarity of what you're doing in the portal. What are your timelines? What does this look like? Then I would read out what's required to make a profile in the portal. So we have that as well. Like what is it? What are we requiring to actually get in the portal, make a profile? And then I would read the FAQs. The FAQs are on our Wraparound certification website. So either in the toolkit or on the certification portal webpage, you can just click FAQs right there. And it'll take you to a whole bunch of the questions you all have been asking, and it's got those answers for it. That FAQ document we are planning to update over time. So we've been gathering questions as we've done webinars, we've done our TA office hours, we come together in different spaces with you all. We've been working to expand and build and add on to those FAQs. And so coming soon, new version, more FAQs. I imagine as we continue down this road and over the next 12 months, those will continue to build and grow as well. So I really encourage start with all of the information because it's so much. And the more that you can think about the information in different ways and in full amounts, the better off you'll be later when you actually go to fingers to keyboards, starting to work on this and thinking through, how does this fit? What does this look like? And how does this actually work? When you read the standards, think this is kind of how they're organized and the way to think about them. So our sections 1 and 2 are the fidelity indicators and the expected outcomes. Those are just the outputs of what really good wraparound is, right? So these are where we're looking at wraparound and say, hey, if we're doing good wraparound, how do we know? What do we expect to see come out of that? What kind of outcomes do we expect to see? What kind of fidelity do we expect to have? How do we know that there's fidelity, right? So you OG wraparound people in the room that are all, oh, we're all about the principles and standards, right? And we want to talk about principles. But how do we know if we're actually doing the principles? How do we know if families are experiencing us as being strength-based, as being individualized? So we've taken that and put that kind of in standards forms. And that's what we're looking for as far as outputs of good wraparound. The next session that is the next chunk is the operationalization of the 4 phases of wraparound. That's how you do wraparound. This section is literally a step-by-step guide. Engagement, first thing you do with the youth and family, standard 3.1. Second thing you do with the family, standard 3.2. It is a step-by-step guide of this is how you do wraparound with a family. This is what your line staff that are working with youth and families should be doing, right? So I'll always call out wraparound is very individualized, right? Not all families go through the phases the same pace. Not all families, some go faster, some go slower. Some start out really strong, get some limitation, and then we need to go back to engagement, right? All of that is intended to be built into the standards. So I say step-by-step guide as in, these are the things that need to happen with the youth and family. You still have the individuality and the ability to change it up for youth and families in front of you. And we tried to build that into the standards as well, where we really are giving you that flexibility to do those things and do them well. And then standards 7 through 10 are how do you support wraparound, right? And so these are your administrative standards, system support standards, facilitative standards that are saying, how do we build up and support wraparound? What does it look like to make wraparound successful? So if I want my facilitator to go out and meet with the youth and family and do a really, really, really good job, what does that mean? What does that look like? And what do I need to do as a leader, as an administrator, as a funder to actually make sure that happens, right? And so that's that section of it, is how do you support? So we're going from what do we want to see out of wraparound? How do we actually do wraparound? And then how do we support wraparound? And I'll think about those overarching things as you're preparing and going through your, as you're preparing and go through the standards. All right. I'm about to roll through the sections a little bit one by one. Again, we're not going to go through all the standards. I've just pulled out a couple of samples inside to talk about. These are my rules to live by. These are not CDSS official rules. These are Rebecca Cox's. This is, hey, I'm super involved in writing these, and this is how I would approach them and hopefully giving you some context that would help you. So the first thing to know is that the standards are intentionally non-prescriptive in some areas. You're going to read the standards and you're going to have questions. You're going to be like, wait a second, it doesn't tell me how often to do this. It doesn't say exactly how to do that. That's intentional. And I can vouch for, we have spent a crazy amount of hours with our wraparound experts asking them, like, what do we actually require and what do we leave as flexible, right? And where's the bar and how do we build the structure and the scaffolding, but allow for that individuality and that flexibility? That's a hallmark of wraparound services, right? That makes wraparound so effective. So the first thing to know is, like, if we didn't write it in there, it means it's not required. If you can't find something in the ACL and you can't find it in the standards, it's not required, right? We are requiring what is in those documents and nothing more, right? There's no hidden answers here. That is the guide, that is the thing. So look in the portal, look at the ACL. If it's not there, you can't find it, we're not requiring you to do it. The second is just, whenever you see those EGs, those 4 examples, those are like helpful hints. Those are not required. So we have several places where we list out. A great example of this is we have the work tools. So the wraparound evaluation and research teams, wraparound fidelity assessment system tools, right? The WIFI, the TOM, the DART. We call those out specifically in the standard as like examples of things you can use to support your meeting of that standard. Those are not required, right? That is just an example to say, hey, here's some good ideas. You have the flexibility to now go that. So if you see those EGs or 4 examples, I know it can be a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes when you're reading something like, we got to meet this, I got to do it. And they say 4, and then we say 4 example, and you're like, oh, I feel like I have to do all the examples. We want you to hear, you truly don't have to do the examples. This is us giving you some hints, tips, helpful guides. and still allowing you to then pick, choose, and build your program for what makes sense for your program, as long as you're still just meeting the overall standard, right? So we truly mean it. When we say EG or for example, we mean that. All right, as I kind of said before, details are not always included. So we might say, you know, do X thing, and we didn't say by doing ding, 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 and we didn't list the 10, 12 steps to get there. If that's the case, that means you get to individualize it. Again, we're trying to promote the creativity and flexibility and individualization that Wraparound has always had. And especially in California, because we are so large and we want these standards to work in the tiniest county and in the largest county and in a rural county and in a superpopulated county. We want them to work across the board for everybody. And we want to stay in alignment with the national Wraparound standards. And I was going to show you guys, and I thought it's just like too much, too boring, but we literally spreadsheeted these with, here's our old California Wraparound standards. Here's the national Wraparound standards. Here's the national tools of how they look at the standards and they measure their standards. And then we crosswalked, combined, talked about, made our own little notes on it, and then came up with these standards. And so in order to stay that alignment, we don't always prescribe exactly every step of everything you get to do. So if you're like, man, this isn't detailed enough, that's because we're trying to give you that flexibility to then implement the program for how it makes sense in your program and in your setting. And just always keep in mind the purpose of the standards, right? I said we get to the why, and again, coming back to that why, they're meant to align. So making sure that youth and families experience the same wraparound no matter where they go, right? And again, being very specific of when we're talking here today, we're talking about the all county letter, and we're talking about aftercare wraparound. And we're using this as like, hey, here's the high fidelity model that we're going to further keep working on. This is a building block, right, for wraparound in California. So we want everybody to be doing the same wraparound. We want youth and families to know that when they get wraparound, they get this service, right? That is the same across the board. They know what to expect, and they get really good wraparound. So with that, that's elevate, right? We want to elevate our wraparound practice. We've seen amazing wraparound work in the state of California, and we've seen some stuff called wraparound that we're like, I'm not sure that's even wraparound, right? We've seen it all. All of it is happening. And so we just want to bring that up to say we're all going to be at the same consistent level, and without hindering the amazing, awesome work that's already being done as well. So we're just really looking to keep that bar up and hopefully uplift and support everybody's practice. And then it's meant to articulate. So articulate what wraparound is. As I said, we've spent a lot of time comparing what we had developed previously in California to the national models and making sure we had alignment, because we're trying to stay true to, this is the national wraparound model. And I think these standards do that really well. And super recommend, like, jump in there, go to the national wraparound, NWI National Wraparound Initiative's website. They have resources for you. I'm like probably driving my teams nuts because I was like, here's your resources. I'm like off the top of my head coming up with more. You can go to the National Wraparound websites and use their tools, and they should meet the wraparound standards, because we have made sure to be in alignment as much as possible while also calling out what works in California and what we need in California, what's specific to California. So we're articulating it, we're writing down. We asked our wraparound steering committee members to write down what works. You guys have been doing wraparound for a long, long time. Tell us how you did it. Tell us what went really well. Tell us what it means to do good wraparound. Tell us what really good wraparound is. Have you ever been brand new to wraparound? I don't know if you remember when you started. Some of you were like, yeah, that was 2 weeks ago. I definitely remember. Some of us are like, oh, it's 20 years. I don't know. When you ask someone what wraparound is and they give you their explanation, how many of you are like, wait, what? I don't understand, right? What do you mean? That makes no sense. Or that was like the vaguest, most canned answer I've ever heard, right? It's an individualized program. And you're like, wait, isn't everything individualized these days? I don't understand what's but what is wraparound, right? So we needed somewhere to write this down and to be able to say, when we say wraparound, this is what we mean, and these are those standards. All right, so let's talk about an example of this. I think someone actually just had a question in chat about training, so this is a great time to talk a little bit about trainings. All right. So if it's not written down, it means it's not required. So I'm going to give everybody a minute. I'm going to be quiet, drink some water for just a minute. While I'm doing that, take a minute, read these standards, and tell me, how often are you required to have booster trainings for your staff? Safe, this is a safe place. And the webinar is recorded, the chat does not get recorded. So,
And we would also love for you to raise your hand then, and please come on in.
or that too, yes, come on in. All right. Sorry for the last question. How often are booster trainings required? So how often are we asking you to have booster trainings? Yep, I see the right answer, right? At least annually, right? How many hours of training are we requiring for wraparound in the standard?
Can you repeat the question, Rebecca?
How many hours of training are we requiring for
Thank you.
wraparound? If you're reading this standard. Thinking this hesitation, either I didn't give enough time. There we go. There it is. Here's rolling in. Yep. Not specific. It's not prescribed. We didn't tell you that, right? We didn't say every staff must have X amount of hours per year, per month, to as much as foundational. We did not prescribe that. And that was very intentional, because large programs and small programs are going to have different needs for training. You might have some very experienced staff that need less training. You might be a whole brand new team and you need a whole lot of training, right? So we're not actually going into the standard and telling you those things. We're asking you to, like, this is the outline and fill in the blanks, right? For your organization and your program, tell us how you do it. What is your plan for training, right? And so the standard itself is really like, let's be specific around, y'all need an initial training. And then we have one of three options. If you're in the portal or if you're on the PDF document, you can click that and it'll actually show you what those three options are. I didn't screenshot them because that wouldn't fit on the screen. None of you would be able to read anything at all. But we have your options, right? You can use UC Davis's training. You can send your staff to UC Davis's training. You can use UC Davis's curriculum and then send your staff to the T4T for that curriculum, or you can develop your own curriculum that's in alignment. And then we've put resources in place to help you support you in doing that. If you click on the resource document that our team has been dropping in chat, on there, you have the links to the toolkit. In the toolkit, you have our training guidelines. You have access to the UC Davis curriculum. You have access to some tips and tricks, and this is our samples and how we want to support you in doing this. From a standards perspective, we're saying, hey, we need you to train your staff. We need you to do this at least annually. We need you to make sure they're trained in the beginning, and that training is in alignment with the state model and what CDSS has approved and our CFFP has developed for wraparound. And then off you go. Tell us how you do it, right? Some programs already do this really, really, really well. And so for you guys, it's just pulling and doing that. We don't want to interrupt. For the others, this might be something where you're like, oh man, we got to build it from scratch. Again, look at the standards, look at what we've got, reach out to your community and get support and get help, but make it individualized and make it for you. I know that showing the training on early on is like, oh my goodness, I have 8,000 questions. We'll circle back at the end and we'll take some questions and talk about it. I just want to make sure I actually get through content, because I will take up 3 hours to talk about standards if I'm not careful, and we do not have that kind of time. All right. So let's get through and start walking through the standards a little bit in order. This is those first two sections I mentioned, the fidelity indicators and expected outcomes. So this is how do we know that we're doing good output? What are good wraparound? What are the outputs of good wraparound, right? The quote on the bottom is pulled directly from the description in the standards, right? So this is what the standards say about these two sections, right? There's simultaneously practice standards to be implemented and data to be tracked and evaluated as in standard 10.1. So calling out here, I'll jump into an example in a minute that is very specific, that we can get a little bit more specific about what that means. But really what we're saying for these entire first two sections of the standards, this is what staff should be doing. So you should have policies, procedures, processes, forms, trainings on, you know, for example, et cetera, on how your staff are doing this with youth and families and how we're looking at it. And you should have ways of evaluating yourself on it. And we mean big E evaluation as far as CQI plan, and we'll talk about that in standard 10.1. And we mean like little E evaluation as far as like checking in with youth and families, doing a little bit of like quality assurance and making sure like, are families experiencing your staff the way that they think they're experiencing your staff, right? If we're saying like, oh, we do wraparound according to the principles and phases, do we have a way to check in and know if families are experiencing the principles, right? How are families doing that? And so it's both like, we're going to put the practice in place and also we're going to pay attention to how we're doing it with lots and lots of flexibility on exactly what. And so here's an example of when we say an example and we're saying EG, right? You can see in that bottom line, line D, we put, for example, through use of satisfaction surveys, through use of the WIFI, right? So take a minute, read the standard. I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about it. I don't want to read it to you, so I'll give you just a second to read it. All right. So here we are. We're talking about being strength-based, right? In this field, we say strength-based so much now, right? In every program across the board, if we're talking about mental health services, child welfare services, in any population, we're talking about being strength-based, right? Wraparound has done the work to prove that being strength-based is effective and to spread the word to the rest of the world to say, hey, being strength-based is great. We should all do it, right? So when we say strength-based, we're looking at like, what does this actually mean? Like, and for the standards, we're talking about actually how are we getting the strengths and how are we actually using strengths throughout the process? And that's what this standard is getting at, is how are we actually using them throughout the process and our families experiencing us as strength-based. If we were to go to one of your homes and ask a family and said, hey, is your team strength-based? Are they going to say yes? Or are they going to be like, wait, what's strength-based? What? Right? So this is our way of getting at that. So we have a little bit in here, like you are identifying strengths, you're making sure they're functional, you're making sure they're driving service delivery or decision making and service planning, right? We talk a little bit about the cans. So you see in there, that top line, the requirements, and then we have the checkbox below. So how do we do that in wraparound? How are we strength-based? Well, we're strength-based by doing a strength inventory, right? All wraparound programs should be doing a strength inventory. That's been a part of wraparound forever. You know, this is just making sure we actually are formally doing it, writing it down, putting it somewhere our teams are actually using it, right? And again, many wraparound programs are already doing this. And we're just saying, show us how, right? Show us how. The identification of individualized strengths must include the CANs, right? So California has adopted the CANs, IP CANs. We're asking you to use it. It's not, we're telling you, have your staff receive coaching and training. Again, being strength-based isn't just a form or a thing we do, it's a way of being. And how do we teach our staff to have that way of being? We do training, we do coaching, we check in with them. Spoiler alert that these relate to other standards. These processes relate to other standards and they'll make more sense as we go on. And then get feedback from families, right? So again, this is an example of like, we're giving you some examples. We're telling you a core component of wraparound. When you're looking at this and you're going, oh, this is section 1. So this is a practice principle and evaluation at the same time. So practice, are my staff doing a strengths inventory? Are they identifying strengths? Are they using the CANs, right? I'm going to set up processes, evaluate my program and say, am I doing these things? Are they working? And we're evaluating. An example of this could be like, So our staff, here's our processes that are in place for our staff to implement these things. To evaluate that, we use the DART and the TOM and the WIFI, right, to collect data. We then take the TOM, which gives us data, to also coach our facilitators to the TOM, right? And so now I'm doing both things. I'm supporting practice, I'm putting something into practice, and I'm collecting data on that. And so that gives us those both, and that's the dual purpose of these things. It can be as well. We train all of our staff, right, to be strength-based, to identify and develop strengths. Here's our form for tracking their strengths, right? So now I'm meeting that standard in that sense. And we also use the DART to review our documentation and make sure those strengths inventories are happening. So we're evaluating ourselves to the DART, and then we're also have the forms and policies in place for our staff to do the work, right? And so there, again, that's a practice and an evaluation at the same time happening. And that's what we're looking for in these sections, is these standards are speaking to doing both. All right, here's another example. This is an expected outcome. So this section is the only section that's a little different. It's organized to say, yes, we're doing this, no, we're not. And it's really, are you evaluating yourself on these things? So we expect youth in Wraparound to have improved functioning in the community. We expect them to be connected to their community more. We expect them to do well in their communities. We don't expect them to be graduating Wraparound in isolation, right? This is one of those outcomes that has been shown and well-researched and is just a normal part of really good Wraparound that we expect to see come out of it if you're doing Wraparound well. And so so again, we're saying, hey, you should be seeing some kind of community functioning coming out of Wraparound. We're not prescribing how you measure this. We're not telling you, in order to evaluate whether or not your kids are getting involved in the community, you must do X, Y, Z. What we're saying is, hey, we expect to see this. Are you evaluating this or not? Are you thinking about it? Tell us how. So if you're thinking about how are we getting youth involved in community activities, it can be as simple as creating a survey that's done at the end of Wraparound and saying, hey, yes, we're evaluating this, right? Come up with your own individualized way of saying, how do we know that our youth and families are getting connected to the communities during their time in Wraparound? How do we actually follow up on that? How do we think about it? How do we know? Again, this standard is that high individualized. And these two sections, this fidelity indicators and evaluation sections, are almost directly from the National Wraparound tools and their quality improvement practice standards, I think it's called, right? So these are the standards that, for example, the Wraparound evaluation research team that owns and helps us use the WIFI, the TOM, the DART, so the Wrap Fidelity Index, the team observation measure, and the DART document assessment review tool. Those measures look at these things, right? So those things would be like an example of hitting the easy button. They work, and they're not free to everybody. There's costs associated with them. They're housed by a different entity. So we're not requiring them. We're letting you have the flexibility to then go do these things. All right, so then we get to this operationalization of the 4 phases of Wraparound, right? So this is section 3 through 6 of the 4 phases of Wraparound. This is, again, that step-by-step how you do Wraparound. So if you remember that slide, what each section means, this is how you do Wraparound, these 4 things. This is the stuff that your staff does with youth and families in order to say, yes, we're doing Wraparound. These are the phases. We're following the phases. We're making sure families get all of the activities that are associated with Wraparound, and families have the same experience across providers. Again, quote right from the bottom of that, what we have in the standards. These are the program and practice elements that are necessary for achieving high fidelity. Again, calling back to that fidelity piece of, if we don't have fidelity, Wraparound's not any better than doing like a traditional therapy service, maybe another evidence-based practice, right? And so if we want to say like Wraparound is amazing and great and it's worthwhile and we want to invest in it and we want to put the hard time, effort, and work into doing really good Wraparound, we have to know then that families are going to get the kinds of outcomes we expect with Wraparound. And so these are the things that families need to do. How did we come up with this? How are these developed? Well, we took those 2015 Wraparound standards We took the national guidance on wraparound. So I have here the phases and activities of the wraparound process. You can see from the image, this document is super old. It's been around forever, and it walks you through. This is how that document in the middle is how I learned to be a wraparound facilitator way back when. It literally goes through engagement phase, do these things with the family. Planning phase, do these things with the family, right? It goes through all 4 phases of wraparound like that. We built that into the standards so that you have a guide to say, hey, this is what my staff should be doing when they're doing wraparound. And then we took that information to our steering committee, to our CWAC, our California Wraparound Advisory Committee, and we asked them to think on it and said, what does this look like? And we painstakingly made them say, when you say you go to a family and you do the engagement phase, what does that look like? Tell us about it. Hey, when wraparound works really well and we feel like families are on fire, what does that look like? Tell me what the phases and principles and practices are that makes that look like that. And we like burnt the brains of your wraparound experts across the states. I forget, at one point we added up the number of years of experience in the room, and it was like wildly out of control. We're like hundreds of years old in wraparound experience in the room, asking them to think about what should a facilitator do with the youth and family? What should a parent partner do with the youth and family? Who on the team should do these things? So again, just this is intended to be a tool. It's supposed to be helpful, right? So it's these are standards of practice. This is the model alignment. This is what we're saying wraparound is. And it's also a tool to say, how do I do wraparound? If I'm lost, I don't know what to do. We're hoping you can pull up the standards and it's right there and it tells you what to do. All right, so let's go through an example. Here's a plan of care example. Now, I said before that you should read the standards in entirety before you get started. And then, of course, we're in a webinar and I'm now pulling out random standards, right? And doing the exact opposite of what you said to do. So I'm going to call back that this is a great example of why you should read the standards in entirety before you get started. This standard speaks to identifying and documenting strengths, right? We talked about strengths a minute ago, right? And there are several standards that speak to being strength-based, right? So these are like an interconnected way of getting at the wraparound principle of being strength-based. It's a phase, it's an activity, it's something your staff are going to do, and it also uplifts and supports the principle of being strength-based. The standards will make a lot more sense to you if you take the time, the true time to read through all of them, and probably more than once. Our team has seen it like a ridiculous number of times. Like I don't know, maybe we're in the hundreds of times of reviewing and thinking about the standards and looking at them. You want to be that person. You want to be that expert that's read them and read them and read them. I know it's not the funnest read in the world. I know it's super long, and I know you all are busy and don't have time for that. And also, this is really, really, really important. And it's just going to make your life easier to understand them if you look at them in context, right? So again, you're looking at the overarching standards, and you want to look at standards individually. So this one is just, you have to be strength-based. We need to document team agreements, document team additional strengths, and document team mission. Programs, many programs, like you're already doing this, right? This has been a part of wraparound for a long time. Now we're just saying, make sure it's formal, make sure you have the training support forms, etc., that you need to support it. Like show us where it is, just formalize it, right? And this isn't a flow. So the standards 3, 4, 5, 6, it's a flow, right? One activity builds on the other, just like the phases of wraparound. If you've taken our foundational wraparound course, we talk about this, right? We talk about phase 1 does this, and then that helps you do phase 2, and that helps you do phase 3. The standards of this section are the same way, right? You're in phase 1, you're talking about strengths, you're learning about their strengths. So we talk about strengths in standard section 3 in engagement. Then we get to plan development, and we talk about standards, or we talk about being strength-based and developing strengths in those standards as well. They build on themselves. If you look at just completing standard 4.1, you're thinking you got to do a whole strengths assessment at this point in time, right? If you're thinking about it in terms of the wraparound phases and thinking about in terms of standard 3, oh, you already did a bunch of work identifying it. In this standard, writing it down. So the standards are interconnected, and your responses to the standards when you're going for approval and certification are probably going to be interconnected, right? We're talking about strengths, we're saying in engagement, we do this with strengths. When we get to plan development, we do this with strengths, right? When we evaluate our wraparound program, we evaluate strengths in this way, right? We're all talking about strengths, it's just slightly different lens depending on where you're at in the standards. So again, super real important that this is looked at in the context of the standards. All right. Here, our final section of the standards. Oh, my voice. Talking way too much all week long. All right. Final section of the standards is our facilitative organizational supports and systems standards, the longest name of a standard section in the history of ever. And yet we think that name is accurate. So this pertains to the organizational and systems leadership functions supporting high fidelity wraparound implementation. Again, if you remember that slide way back when we said what section what, these sections is about supporting your wraparound program. So we talked about how do we know what wraparound's good? We talked about what do we do in wraparound? And now we're saying, how do we support wraparound? How do we make sure it's successful? What is my leadership, my system, my administrators, my funders, what do they need to do to make sure that wraparound is successful, right? And I'm call out here that these, again, connected to national standards, a part of the national standards. And I think for a very long time in California, we got very focused on the practice of wraparound, and we forgot about the supports that need to go into it. And if you look at, our California wraparound theory of change, if you look at the National Wraparound Initiative's theory of change, it is super important. What the system does around a wraparound program, around a wraparound implementation is super important. Without the support of the larger system, wraparound goes to die, right? Wraparound cannot be successful if it doesn't have the support of its leadership and its system around it. And so that's what these standards are speaking through, that section 7 through 10. And so we're thinking now we're getting outside of what do my staff do? And you're thinking as a leader, what am I doing to make sure my staff are successful? Or if you're a county and you're contracting out to a wraparound provider, you're thinking about what am I doing as a county to make sure that my providers are successful, that the person on the ground delivering services to youth and family has everything they need to get the job done and do it well and do it effectively. Because wrap fidelity is real hard. It's a lot of work, right? And it's not something that we can just lightly implement and say, here's a practice, go do it. It takes a lot of support to make wraparound successful. All right. And so I've kind of already jumped on this a little bit, but what's the definition of facilitate? We put in the word, we put right in the standards what you're doing in this part. You're facilitating, it's facilitative supports, right? So your job is to facilitate, to make an action, process, or task easier or more likely to happen, right? So you're making wraparound successful by facilitating and doing those things that makes it better. It's also meant to be a roadmap for counties and providers, for leadership to put the right pieces in place for wraparound to work, right? So if you're brand new to wraparound, you're like, what do I do, right? This is, hey, here's the plan. Here's the roadmap for the scaffolding. Here's the roadmap to build the building and the infrastructure that you need. And then sections 3 through 6 are your, here's how you do it. Here's how that you do it with the families once this is in place. I looked ahead and thought, you know what, if I have to say facilitative organizational system supports 1,000 times, I'm going to go crazy. So again, I've created an acronym for you. We have FOSSS examples for this section. All right, so here's another hot topic. In case you're in the chat and you're like, oh man, I have so many questions on all these standards. I did actually call out the ones that I thought were probably the hardest for people to think about and probably where you all have the most questions. So that is a little bit intentional. Again, we'll have time for some questions at the end. But speaking to this, like funding, right? Hot topic funding, where's the money? I always think, Donna said this once in a training when we were doing together, and it just sticks with me all the time, like, show me the money. Her great movie references. Every time I see these standards, that's what I think. Show me the money. All right. So the standard is, it's talking about how do we fund and how do we support high fidelity wraparound. let's go back and think about what steps did I give you to approach the wraparound standards and to think about it, right? So we had this wonderful slide at the very beginning that sounded all nice and lovely and so much prettier than these heavy word texts of the standards, right? Which is, here's the acronym again: gather, read, analyze, fill. So when you're thinking about the standard 8.1, start out by thinking of gathering, like, who do I need? Who do I need to get to the table to do this standard? This is a big ask. We're telling you, like, hey, wraparound's only successful if you pay for it. And we have to pay for it well. And you all need to figure it out. Like, here, show us that you're doing that, right? Think about it. And this isn't like a, hey, you must, but this is from our wraparound steering committee talking about what works for wraparound and what does wraparound need. And wraparound needs to be supported. It needs to do the things, right? We have things like flexible, and we're going to talk about flex funds for a little bit. That's a pot of money, right? And so that's funding, that's money. And so again, we're not prescribing for you exactly how that needs to be done. See earlier webinars where we talked about how important it is to braid funding, right? And get your people together. This is a standard where it's, hey, let's gather the people. Let's get the right people in place. If you are alone in a silo trying to figure out how to fund a wraparound and how to meet these standards, you're going to go insane because it's not possible. You need the people at the table. We need to get the people who can make the decisions and make the changes, right? I don't think anyone's going to be able to implement this on themselves. So we're talking about cross systems collaborations, providers really getting out, looking at your structure and your budget, counties, same thing. What are our contracts? What do they look like? What funding sources are we using? What does this look like? If you have specific funding questions, I know we always get funding questions for a lot. There's a lot that are under county alignment now. And so there's a lot that the standards don't say, because that is your county and how you do things in your county, right? And we've had all of the discussions on the steering committee about, we do it this way and we do it that way, right? Again, for certification and approval right now, we are talking about aftercare wraparounds. So if you have questions about, how do I fund aftercare wraparound? How do I make this make sense? How do we actually get all of the things you're asking for in the standards? We have some answers for that. Reach out to our technical assistants. We also are planning some webinars on fiscal. We've been mapping out webinars as we go. And so we'll have a webinar on the fiscal pieces. But in the meantime, we have technical assistants. We have resources available to talk about this. Spoiler alert, we are going to ask you to get the right people to the table to have the conversation with us. So I can't tell just one person in your county the right way to fund something and send them off you go, and they don't have to talk to anybody else, right? We're gonna need your people. So you're gonna need your people. So again, start with the gathering, start getting the people to the table first, and then look at the standards as an entirety and say, hey, we have to funnel this. What does this look like? What are we talking about? What are our resources? And start rolling through that. All right, another FOSS example of being individualized, where we're not telling you exactly how to do something. I mentioned flex funds, right? Flex funds has been a staple of wraparound. This is that flexibility in services and support, meeting families' needs that aren't met by other services. You know, having that ability to create and give families what they need in a timely manner. I expect this to take a lot of collaboration to achieve this standard, right? I don't expect this to just be something that you just kind of like, oh, this is what we do, no big deal. I imagine there's, if you don't have flex funds up and operating already, you're gonna have to do some work to get these done and get these processed up. We intentionally did not prescribe specific timelines for flex funds, specific dollar amounts for flex funds. We did not create a list of flex funds that you're allowed to do and ones that you aren't allowed to do, because we want it to be individualized for youth and families and for your counties and for your providers. We don't want to say, use flex funds to buy XYZ, and then family needs item F and it's not on our list, and oh, now you can't pay for it, right? So we gave you here the principles and the practices for how you think about flex funds. How do you approve flex fund? What should your approval process look for flex funds in a way that brings the wraparound principle of being individualized to life in your administrative processes, right? And so some of your larger organizations that have been doing wraparound, or I said larger, I really meant OG, because our small ones do it too, right? Some of your wraparound organizations that have been around a long time and use flex funds really well, this is actually the criteria that they use to approve flex funds or not, right? Is it adding value to the team mission? Does it build on their strengths, right? That's my checklist for approving a flex fund and thinking about that. So here we're telling you, you have the freedom, you have the flexibility to define your own approval process, to think about what this looks like, how to blend it together, just making sure that these are the, that your flex funds are evaluated based on this best practice criteria, which is the 1 through 7 there, right? So again, we're giving you some flexibility here, and we are not trying to say every family gets X amount of dollars, every this, every that, right? These standards, again, this is wraparound come to life in an administrative process. I'm going to acknowledge that's hard, right? This was challenging to talk about and to put guidance around. Like, we spent a ton of time again on flex funds and having those discussions. Like, again, how do you take something that's principle based in wraparound and super creative and super flexible, and then put it into a standard that we can use statewide? All right. And I'll call it again, just jumping back to that. If you have stuff on flex funds and you're like, I see the standard. I see that we don't have prescribed amounts. I see that we don't do that. And I am still so lost. I read all the standards. I got my fiscal person. I don't understand. Again, reach out to technical assistance. We're here. We have experts. We have teams of people that can help guide you through. Reach out to us, right? Go through our resources. I'll plug again, we have TA office hours once a week on Fridays. You can find the links in the resource document that we've been dropping. Come to our TA office hours. We can have some discussions. You can ask some questions, right? We want these resources to be for you. We recognize that this is a lot. These are big standards. There's a lot of them, and they're complicated to implement. And we have expertise all over California that can help and support with this. Let us help you. Let us connect you. I'll plug the wraparound hubs as well. Our California wraparound hubs, our California wraparound advisory committee, all of those are places where we can come together. You can ask your buddy, hey, other county, what do you do for flex fund? Hey, provider, you've been doing this for a long time. What do you do for flex funds, right? We want you guys to have those spaces to share, to ask questions, to not feel alone on an island as you're doing these and thinking about these. All right, here's another example of being super individualized. This is one of our top FAQs that we get when folks ask us about specific standards. This is right up on the top of the list of questions we get. All right, the standards has 7 required roles in a job. You can see right here on the slide, the following roles and functions of a high fidelity team are not necessarily individual people or positions. So we said, here's the required roles. There's 7 roles on here that you must fill. You do not have to have 7 different people to fill these roles, right? This in the standards, it's in the checkbox things that I'll show you in a minute. I want to call out and pause really quick just to remind and highlight this again, is for aftercare wraparound. So we know that DHCS released their high fidelity wraparound concept paper around the same time that we're doing these webinars and talking about our aftercare wraparound. And we know there's been some confusion. We've seen it, I think, on the RCFFP end quite a bit with some of the questions and things we're getting. This is not the roles from the high fidelity wraparound concept paper. That paper is a concept. If you have feedback about that paper, there's some channels and things you can do for that. For aftercare wraparound, we're saying here's the 7 roles. You have the flexibility to meet these roles in a way that makes sense for your counties. And so here's the requirements below that standards. This is what we're asking, and this is what it'll look like. So meet each of those roles or functions. Give us a good description and responsibility of each role. Examples of those role descriptions and responsibilities can be found in our wraparound standards toolkit. If you're in the portal, that is linked. So you could be in the portal, you're at the standard, you click on that, it'll actually take you to our wraparound toolkit where these resources are housed. And you can see all of our wraparound roles and some examples of what this can look like in your organization. So again, this is lots of room to individualize. We're saying, hey, you need 7 roles. These are the roles that make wraparound successful in California. These are the roles that we have been using. And this is what our steering committee has recommended. Those work groups have recommended to say, yeah, if you want to do really good wraparound, this is what you need. These are the people you need to the table. These are the roles you need to fill, right? Now we're saying, okay, do that, but individualize. We understand that you can't all hire 7 different people. You can individualize, you can blend, you can use multiple roles for one person. We're asking you to be thoughtful and clear about the roles on behalf of youth and families, right? Because what we want from this is that youth and families get the type of care that they need, and that they know if you're blending a role, they can understand, this is my facilitator and this is what a facilitator does. This is my parent partner and this is what a parent partner does. I know who to go to for what thing in wraparound. I understand if I need to change providers, if I go away from wraparound and come back 2 years later, I'm going to get the same roles, the same experience, and I'm going to understand what it means, right? And so we've seen this as just, I know our steering committee, when we were developing the standards, talked quite a bit about, we've seen this become a problem over time of people get real confused at who's doing what in wraparound, right? A lot of us are OG trainers of wraparound, and we see it in the trainings, right? And it's like everybody's trying to do the same thing, and you have 10 people trying to like work on the same thing with the family. It's real confused, and families don't know who to talk about what. So just be clear, have that clarity, develop it, and tell us what you're doing, right? Tell us what that is. Again, as long as you have those 7 there, and again, you're going line by line by these checklists. All right, we're rounding it out, and then on our last little section of the standards, and this is my dark alley slide. Some of you, there's a couple of you that are with me, co-spirited, that say data standards. Woohoo! Yay! I'm so excited and happy to talk about the data, right? For the rest of you, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. Bear with us. Hang on. It's going to be okay. There's only 2. We got this. All right. Again, data standards. So here it is. We're saying programs implement CQI evaluations. So the wraparound standard talks about continuous quality improvement. We're creating a plan. We know that there are some of you that are super terrified of data. And here we are saying, you have to get that data in your wraparound programs. And guess what, guys? We got to get data. We live in the data age. It's here. We need it, right? Programs cannot survive if they don't collect data. If we can't show the people that fund us, I'm not talking about Danny and her team on the team screen, because they are bought in on wraparound. They are amazing. It's way upstream, way down the line. We have to be able to show, are we being effective? Are we doing what we said we do? And also, again, bring it back to the youth and families. Let's not waste their time with bad wraparound, because we never evaluated whether we were doing a good job or not, right? We need to evaluate what we're doing a good job. So again, you can see the standard here. You can read through the standard. The point is that you get to create a data plan and show it to us, right? Again, this is it. This is the standard. There's not much more beyond that, right? If you're looking at this and you're saying, wait a second, there's data here. How in the world do we pay for this? Who's funding this? Rah. See standard 8.1, where we said, we got to figure it out. Right? Your funding for wraparound has to be able to meet all of the standards. This is part of the standards. So this is something that you want to do some planning and thinking about on funding. And again, that's a county-wide, provider-wide decision, not something where we can dictate and say, this is exactly how you do that. That's something that you're going to have to do amongst the collaborations of your counties and looking for that. All right, if you're also looking for this and you're saying, well, what about the work tools? Wraparound, I keep hearing this word work tools, wraparound evaluation research team. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google wraparound evaluation research team. That'll pop right up. You can get on their website. You can see what they're all about. They've been great partners for us with the CQI statewide wraparound CQI evaluation pilot that we're doing. They've been great pilot partners for us as we're testing out like what data should we collect. We talk about statewide data collection coming soon, right? So eventually we will have a process for statewide data collection that's not developed yet. We're trying to get you all started on collecting some data and evaluating your programs while we build these statewide processes. And so Word's been a part of that. So you're like, well, what about the work tools? Those are great. Yeah, they're fantastic. If you want to use them to meet these standards, again, that's like an easy button. They meet the standards. They will they will support you, they'll help you, they'll meet the standards. And we're not saying you have to use Word. You do not have to use the Wraparound Fidelity Index and the TOM and the DART and all those things. You can create your own processes for this. Again, you have that flexibility to do that. Again, we know different providers, organizations have different levels of tools and resources and funding, and you all have different needs. The data collection for Mono County is going to look very different from the data collection at Riverside County. We know because we have put Riverside County and Mono County in the same room and made them talk to each of them together, right? We know, we understand that. And so again, this is where that we're trying to build that, like, we need data, we got to do this. Here's the standard around it, and this is how you meet it. All right, here's the requirements for this. This is calling out this is one of those times where we're saying separately counties and providers. So counties, we're asking, build collaborative implementation of a local CQI evaluation plan. So let's go back again, together, get your people. Collaborative implementation. You cannot do this in a silo. This isn't child welfare's plan for CQI and evaluation. I'm not going to talk to anyone else in the system. This can't be probation's plan, and I'm not going to talk to anyone else in the system. This is your unified, like, you got to get your system of care people together, and we got to develop this plan together. And we're going to get and collect the data. Here they are, sections 1 and 2 that we talked about before in the standards, and give us, and demographics, right? So those 3 things is what you're collecting the data on. Oh, I double clicked. Okay. Providers, you get to click that little NA at the bottom here. This one, this one you can say, cool, county's actually gonna create the CQI plan. I'm gonna participate in whatever the county says. I'm going to click that little NA, providers only, or yeah, providers only. That's not me. I will participate in whatever my county defines in my contract for them to meet the standard. Remember though, that you still have to meet the standards in sections 1 and 2. So it doesn't absolve you from doing any kind of program evaluation at all. You still need to evaluate your program. You're just not developing this large CQI plan that we're asking of the county to develop. Just a reminder again, our vision, our goal is that counties and providers are having the same alignment on these standards, right? You guys are using the same thing. So we're not confused about what we're talking about it. So county, you're saying, this is my CQI plan. Provider, you know exactly what the county's talking about. You're all looking at the same things that you need to evaluate, the section 1 and 2 of the standards. And we're hoping that that comes up collaborative, on the same page, streamline as possible, right? So putting that work in together. So again, providers, you're not absolved, you just do not have to do the things in the requirements for standard 10.1. And then standard 10.2. So like I said, only 2 standards, hopefully not scary, crazy. We're using, use your data. That's what this standard is about. Hey, it's not a good practice to collect a bunch of data and do nothing with it, or collect a bunch of data and then evaluate yourself 2 years later after all the people who have done the work that the data was on have long left and it's not actually useful for working with youth and families. So we're just asking, like, collect data, use it. Again, this is a good idea for you and your program, right? You should be doing this anyway out of like, hey, I've seen the impacts that data can have on a program. It's amazing. I'll shout out Olive Crest and Riverside County. We use them in our Wraparound CQI pilot, and we often are like, hey, what are you guys doing for the data? Because you're doing some really cool stuff. Show us. Our instructors, Tyler Stickney and Annabelle Godoy are from Olive Crest, and they have a class on CQI and Wraparound that's really great that talks about how to do some of these data things. So if you're like, I want to know more about CQI, take their class. It's great. It's fantastic. And we will have a webinar on CQI specifically as well. So stay tuned for that. But it's really, this standard is about use your data, use it to train staff. Don't do all the work of collecting data and let it collect dust in a drive somewhere. I was going to say on a shelf, but shelves, and that's way outdated. don't let it go to die in your someone's computer somewhere and not use it. So the standard is just about use your data, implement your data, do it, make it useful for your program, because if you do, it'll uplift your practice even more. It actually will make your life easier. Your staff will appreciate it. Your staff will get feedback and the things that they do to do well, and your youth and families will appreciate it because they get the opportunity to give feedback, and you do, again, ensuring we're doing a really, really good job for our youth and families, because Wraparound's a lot for them to participate in and do. All right, so graph, GRA, the A's for analyze, right? So you're going to analyze your needs. All right, we've read the standards, we've read all the things, we have the right people together, we started a book club, we all got our copies, we spent the hours and time to read all the things. Now let's actually start analyzing. Where are we at by standards? The Gavin and Manuel did a great job about talking about this last week for providers and counties, and they showed you some example of what they did. And so, you know, go back, watch those webinars and start thinking it. But now's the time we're going to analyze. When you analyze, you're going to look at the standards individually and as a whole, right? And again, these are just questions from my mind. None of this is like, you have to do it this way, but here's my brain and this is what I would do, right? I'd look at, what do we already have in place? What standards are we fantastic at? What do we do super well? What's already done? What can I check off the list, right? What do we need to change? Like, what do we have? We have this that's in place, but you know, it's not quite in alignment with these standards. Or, ooh, we've drifted here. Or, yeah, that was great 15 years ago, but we haven't updated it since. We should probably refresh it. So look at what you need to change. What exists but needs to be changed? And then look at, what do we create? Where are the standards where we have nothing, right? Where are the standards where, yeah, we're not meeting that, or we are meeting it, but no one ever wrote it down, right? I imagine that's out there quite a bit. Like, yeah, we're doing really great practice on that. We don't have anything on writing to show that we actually do it. So look at those, like, what do I need to create? Start organizing around that and thinking about that. Again, your strengths. What do I do well? What is our program grade up? That can be within our wraparound program and according to our standards. And it can just be in general. What are we good at? What are we strengths? And then again, just back to who's at your table. Again, this is so important. You need the right people. You need more than one person. You need all the brains together looking at these things. So who do we need to the table? So I would do a real thorough analysis of, what does this look like? This is going to take some hours. This is going to take some time, right? We expect that too. Just reading the standards takes a lot of time. And then you got to analyze them. We understand. We gave you 10 sections of standards and it's quite a bit. There's a lot that goes into wraparound. And again, there's programs that have been around a long time and have done a lot of these things are doing these things, right? They've come back and said, this is what helps and this is what's successful, right? So I have that. So again, Gavin and Manuel gave you their stuff, their kind of approach and some examples of what they're looking at on the county level and provider level to start rolling with the standards and figuring out what they need to do to get approved and certified. I just, when I was doing this PowerPoint, I was like, oh man, this sounds like a SWOT analysis. Anybody, SWOT analysis is super old organizational leadership stuff from way back in the day. Super old, but this might be the time, like, dust off your SWOT analysis, right? Find out someone who remembers how to do this from way back when, and maybe do that. Maybe just start SWOT analyzing. And again, look at the standards as a whole and also look at individual ones, right? You could also do this by section. You could say for sections 1 and 2, like, let's chunk it up, right? For sections 1 and 2, when we're looking at our outputs, how good are we at evaluating these things? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses, right? For section 3 through 6 on our practice, let's get together. Let's talk to our people who do the practice. I mean, we're pulling together our parent partners and our facilitators and our family specialists and our RAP supervisor. Maybe we're pulling them together and asking them, which of these standards are easy for you? Which one of these are hard? Do you have what you need to do them? Do we have the right forms? Is our form really, really hard and it makes no sense? And now you're doing like wraparound over here while filling out this form over here. This is the time to identify those things. Because as you go through the standards, you can start aligning them and then just make your life easier, right? And make this, bringing those things in alignment. You might go to your leadership team and say, all right, leadership team, I want you to look at standard sections 7 through 10. Are we supporting our wraparound practice? What does this look like? Tell me the strengths, tell me the weaknesses, tell me the opportunities in those specific, in that section 7 through 10, right? So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. The point is to just take the time to really analyze and really think about, what does this look like and how can we do that? And then after you've analyzed, then it's time to go in and fill the portal. I think if you just jump in into the portal and just start filling out, you're going to be real mad at it, right? And it's going to be hard, right? So take that time to do the analysis first, and then fill in and fill out, right? So fill in, fill out, our last graph. So fill in the blanks for your programs, create the things you want to create. I put a picture of Clay here because you get to create your wraparound program. We are giving you the tools, the resources, the standards, the structure. We gave you the rules, right? So we gave you the instructions. Here's your furniture. Here's the tools. Here's the part. Here's those annoying grids that are confusing and hard to read. And we think it's super clear, and you're reading it and you're like, I don't understand which screw to use, right? But we gave you those tools. Now it's your job to create and build. We didn't paint it for you, right? We didn't tell you what room of the house to put it in. We didn't tell you if you need one or two of these, right? So you have that individualization. And we hope that as you go through this work and you start the process of it, you see those opportunities. And we continue to create something that has been amazing in Wraparound from California, is that we've had this incredible ability to have counties do the same thing in slightly different ways, in really beautiful ways, right? And so, and we've seen that we're like, oh, Placer does it this way and Sacramento does it this way, and both are right and both are great. They're just different, and we want to continue to have that. And so fill in your breaks, create your program. And once you have that great program model and you have your design and you have your forms and processes, now go fill out the form. Right? Here's an example again of the portal. This is what that form looks like. Here's us meeting the standard, and we're just telling you, like, I meet the standards, I got it, right? And here it is. So strengths, needs, culture, like your vision discovery for this, we're saying, hey, we did it. Yeah, check. We do a family vision. I read that in the standards. Here's our form. Here's our process. This is how we train our staff to it. Check. And I'm writing about it. I'm telling whoever the reviewer is. So, dear reviewer, this is what we do. Here's our description of our practice. And then you can see that in this form, this template, this policy, this procedure, whatever that documentation is you're uploading, and saying, here it is, this is where it is, this is how you find it. If everything's in place, this won't feel as bad, right? Put it all in place. Again, because it's interconnected, you're going to find that as you talk about strengths in section 3, remember, we also talked about it in section 4, we talked about it in section 2, right? Strength shows up just like in true wraparound practice. Strength shows up over and over and over again. If you're just diving in to type it in here without doing the organization work, you might drive yourself nuts. If you do the analysis, do the organization, I think it'll help significantly. All right, we have made it to our Q&A portion.
Wow, we did it.
We did it.
Rebecca, thank you for this amazing presentation. I'm always in awe of your presentation style and when you're giving information, and I'm like, dang, you're awesome. I do want to highlight before we start throwing our questions at Rebecca and Danny and her team, we are keeping a pulse on our Wraparound foundational courses. We do understand that there is a wait list. Please, 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 if you want to sign up for a class and you see a wait list, I encourage you to add yourself to the wait list. It will give us a truer number of how many people actually are interested in needing foundational wraparound. We are adding a wraparound foundational class. We're just putting that together now, so more to come. We also often open up the waiting list for those foundational classes. I did find out if you are having issues breaking through some of those IT firewalls in regards to documentation, our box link, please email us at the resource center, ucdavis.edu. Send us an email and we will absolutely send you that document via email. Also, if we did not answer, you think of a question after our webinar today, we do have TA drop-in hours this Friday from 2 to 3:30. Please join us. It's an amazing space. We've got amazing questions, and hopefully we can provide you the answer and support that you are needing. All right, with that, Rebecca and Danny, come on in. The first question is, When the portal asks for numbers served through Wraparound, does this question refer to aftercare clients only or all Wraparound clients?
I believe in this case, we're looking for all wraparound clients.
Thank you.
And this is just gathering information. This is not,
It doesn't matter. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but
doesn't matter, but
not getting graded. Question 2. Are counties able to have multiple providers within?
Yes.
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 I want to be like,
Counties-
I have the answer. I'm like, yes. Is there
And in
an
fact, we
updated?
encourage counties to work with
Yes.
STRTPs, to work with tribes, Indian health centers, right? We encourage counties to work with a diverse number of providers to meet the needs of the individual kids. So, but
And I would
counties
have
have
to
their own discretion.
imagine with the potential to certify a provider or an organization, more providers may be interested in working alongside counties. So I'm sure that they'll be coming out of the woodwork and saying, hey, we'd like to work with you. Is there an updated funding matrix?
We have not posted an updated one. We do have one posted that should be largely correct. There may be some additions coming, and also in the future. We know there will be additions coming in the future, but that's why we're trying to separate that out. We're not going to talk about DHCS, Medi-Cal, bundled rates, and all that stuff yet. We know it's coming, but that is not here today. That it's not in front of us right now. So we are going to focus on what we have now, and we will update those later when it becomes the right time to do so.
Thank you for that reminder, Danny.
Mhm.
I was going to mention this one during my opening spiel. Our TA calls are all individual registrations. I know Tamara has been dropping all of the links and our pages in the chat. You'll just go to the website and register like you would for a class or a course or a webinar. And they're all individual, so they won't invite you to all of them. You'll have to individually register for the TAs. Please join. All right. Where do I find the list of required training for wraparound facilitators?
That's a great question. You won't. So except in the ACL. So if you go to, I forget exactly, like appendix B, A, B, C, one of those appendix.
A lot of them.
Yeah, it's been a minute. If you go in there, it outlines the trainings that are out in the ACL, and then in the standards, it's those standards that are there are it, and the standards don't say facilitators must be trained to this, and this. So you have to have role specific training for your facilitators. You have to build that. And in the ACL, you'll in those appendix exactly what's listed there. So it's,
yeah, you have to utilize the UC Davis training or your own training that meets the same standards, and there's a matrix of training requirements for the foundational training. But outside of the foundational training, you have a lot of breadth of how you're going to train your staff. So that's what you upload and provide us, is how you're going to do that and what you're going to use. UC Davis RCFFP does have trainings. You are welcome to join those, but you are also welcome to use other trainers.
Absolutely. And if your county or organization is looking to certify your staff and utilize the foundational wraparound training provided by UC Davis, the only requirement is those trainers have to complete the entire course of wraparound foundational to be able to enter into that space. Okay. I lost my place. I appreciate some standards are not specified to promote flexibility. Can and will counties in their contracts add additional specifications?
I can't tell you what counties are planning to do. I would encourage you to contact your county wraparound coordinator for your counties that you work with and talk with them.
And we did drop the list for your county wraparound coordinator. I know we did have a participant. Can people share how they measure this improved functioning in community? Rebecca, you're our data queen. Do you know any other measures that help with improved functioning in the community?
I mean, depends on your program, depends on what your structure is. So outside of the work tools that we mentioned, you can survey. right? So create a survey for your youth and families and ask them, right? Or, have somebody who's real good at data and things do that. You can look at your service locations. So you could look at are we when we meet with our kids, are they out in the community, or is it always in a home or office? If I'm always meeting a kid in a home or office, it's a pretty good indication they're probably always at home or in an office there too, right? So there could be something like that. CANS has community functioning scores on things, it has those, blanking a little bit on the exact language right now, but your CANS speaks to that as well. So you could look at CANS scores over time, and you could say, when a kid first comes in, how are they doing in the community versus when they exit, right? So there's a lot of options.
We have a follow-up question. Kelly asks, what is the recommended high fidelity wraparound evaluation tools? For example, the WFSA, the DART, etc. Side quest. Also, can you share more about how the strength-based inventory, what that may look like?
Nice. Okay. So I'll tackle strength-based inventory first. That's an example of a super individualized thing that is being done a million different ways across the board. Way back when I was a facilitator, we would do a fun thing where we would do two things. So we would do for all the teams, we're just listing out everybody's strengths, and we're keeping that documentation, right? So we all have it. And then for the kiddo, we would do a document with pretty pictures and what they're interested in, and we would list their strengths all over it, right? So that's an example of one of those super creative, fun things. Strengths inventory is a very fancy way of saying, write down their strengths, right? Make it meaningful and make it something we can refer back to later. Bonus points if it's pretty and fun and the family wants to keep it, right? So it really is just extremely individualized. Yeah. And then remind me again, where was I going with the second part or the first part of that question?
Yes, I'm sorry. I scrolled down. What is recommended in high fidelity wraparound for evaluation tools? For example, the WFSA or the DART, etc. Is there a recommendation?
Yeah. My Rebecca Cox's unofficial, this is great recommendation is that you find the data person for your organization and start building that. And if you're maybe the work tools, talk to the work team, reach out to them directly and have a conversation with them, because they know and they're the experts and they can tell you which of theirs. So if you're looking at those official tools, Wi-Fi, Tom, Dart, look at them. I think a lot of the feedback we've gotten is that the Dart gives you some incredible feedback and data into your evaluations, but it's more time intensive. The RAP Fidelity Index and the team observation measure are a little bit easier to implement. The team observation measure is great because you can use it to support your coaching and your data evaluation. So I would look at all three of those, but it really is going to depend on your size, your capacity, what that actually looks like, how many kiddos you need to evaluate. And so I would say reach out to the work team directly, or try to find a data person who's really good at those sorts of things.
And in our wraparound toolkit, under evaluation, you can find the work team's contact information. So that's there as well.
Yeah, I also see a question popping into the chat that relates to all of that. So I'll just chime in and add.
Yes, please.
Security asked when outcome tools will be released to providers at no cost. We are currently running a pilot using the work tools. It did cover the cost of the tools for the pilot sites. In order for us to get the whole state tools at no cost, obviously we would have to complete our pilot and go through a budget proposal in order to get that covered. So it would have to also go through our whole process plus the state legislative budgeting process. So that would be a ways out, which is why you see a little bit of a reduction in the number of CQI measures that we were looking for. We did take a few out for the time being that we can add back in later if tools become widely available to all providers. But in anticipation that we do not have that available at this time, we did try to look at our standards and make sure that they were achievable without just one specified tool. But that is, we would love to do that at some point in time. Yes, we would love to get there.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question. Do we have to submit a document with a guide? How is an agent or with a guide as how as an agency we are going to follow each standard? Is this part of the certification submission requirements?
So our certification was designed to use whatever tools you have for your agency. So if you would like to create something new, you are welcome to do that. If you would like to utilize your existing documents that you already have that you use every day with your wraparound team, use those. So we have not prescribed what it looks like. And we actually, this attempt was to not make you write a separate report that then sits on a shelf and starts to gather dust. The intent was for this, for you to be able to use the tools that you use for your team, upload them, and then tell us throughout the portal where to find what you're talking about. So for every item, you will tell us this uploaded document on these pages, so our reviewers can go find them in whatever documents make sense for your agency. And as long as we understand your logic and we can look at it and say, ah, yes, I see it. This is where they address that. This is how they're going to apply it. Then you will have met that standard. We're trying to give the flexibility for you all to do what makes sense in your living documents that you already utilize without adding additional work. So just edit what you have, or if it works for you to create something new, do so, but please do what makes sense for your organization's work.
Thank you, Danny. Next question. What will the impact of the model, which to my understanding does build in clinician therapists? Rebecca, are you looking at the Q&A document? This is number 10. So there's an A and a B. A, contracts funding, or B, staff team capacity to address child and family needs, and C, morale of the clinician in the workforce.
If I said does build in, I meant does not. That's my understanding. Sorry.
Got it. Excuse me. No, I'll add that. Thank you.
So, do you want to jump in?
Either or. Go ahead.
I was going to say our model does not include a clinician because the family might have an outside clinician that they are already working with, right? Maybe it includes a clinician, maybe it does not. We wanted to provide that flexibility. I see Rebecca nodding. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's exactly it. So I think it makes a lot of sense for wraparound programs to have a clinician. We just didn't mandate it because, again, individualization. We want the ability for, hey, this kid comes with a wraparound, or hey, we have a great working relationship with this in our county. Our county structures our clinical services this way, and so we want to use this. We wanted to leave that flexibility, so we did not require the clinician role.
Excellent. Thank you. James did just drop our evaluation. Please take a moment to fill it out. We do look at all of your responses and take it into consideration for future presentations. And please continue to listen in as we go through the Q&A document. Might you share the standards crosswalk you developed in your work group process? Also, a bibliography of research that shows how high fidelity produces better child family outcomes. This would be useful.
Oh, interesting. So I can't release the documents that we use to develop it because that is very internal in all our things, and it has all of our notes on everything ever. I'm also not sure that I have all of it anymore because it's been a long process. And so no, we can't release those things. But if you want to go, if you go to the National Wraparound Initiative's website, you will see their featured key publications. They have on there, they have the handbook for supervisors and managers, or something, leaderships and managers on the NWI website. I would suggest go there, start there and read that. They have our quality insurance practice standards we use to develop that as well. You can see those there. If you read the standards and read the stuff they got, it should all sound very familiar. It won't be the exact same. We did not copy and paste their work. We did talk about specific to California and what we're looking for in California, or how things fit in California. All of that is there. As far as the research goes, I don't have time in a webinar to like pull all the research studies. You can go to their, again, they have featured research and publications. You can look at it. Cold Iron et al. In 2017, I believe, did a, research words, you're surprising me with this. they looked at all the wraparound research that is done for over a real long time. And that was one of their main takeaways that they saw as a pattern in the research, is that when we see studies, like if we have 22 control outcome studies, 0 of them showed that wraparound had any worse outcomes than anything else. A few of them showed wraparound had the same outcomes as other evidence-based practices. For those ones that had the same outcomes, fidelity was poor. And for the ones that showed better outcomes, the fidelity was really high. So that's how we know.
I also put a link in the chat to the FFPSA Federal Clearinghouse for Prevention Services Programs, because this is listed as a promising practice. And there's a series of bibliography that was used for that clearinghouse review, where you can see a whole load of citations and some of the data that was looked at for that analysis. There will be additional research on the NWI website as well. But it seemed like the clearinghouse, at least in a quick little search of mine, was a good place to look at a large bibliography of research.
Yep, that is great. Also call out too, for the DHCS, we said we weren't talking about this, but if you look at the DHCS high fidelity wraparound concept paper, in their introduction, they talk about wraparound as being an effective evidence-based practice as well. Which is exciting.
Very exciting. Awesome. Okay. What is UC Davis and the state behavioral health doing to align expectations about high fidelity with agency partners from child welfare, probation, education, etc.?
So I would say this is really more of our responsibility, right?
I was going to say nothing. I'm going to say what she says.
Yeah. UC Davis is our contractor. The responsibility of really working in partnership with the other state agencies is our responsibility. We have had UC Davis join us for some of those meetings, but we do meet regularly with DHCS. We are working very intensely, very closely with them. And as you can tell through the letter, there's lots of notations and elements of alignment. We worked a very long time with DHCS to make sure we were as much in alignment as we could possibly be, given that everything in the world is also changing at the same time. So again, recognizing that there is also a DHCS concept paper out for public comment, and just a reminder that that is a concept paper that is not current policy. Things you see in there are not required in our current standards. For example, they have ratios. We do not have ratios. We are not asking you for ratios at this point in time, right? So keep that as something over here, but know that we meet on a regular basis. Leadership at DSS and DHCS are constantly talking and working behind the scenes to align all of the things. And the large vision for high fidelity wraparound, which you can see laid out in the aftercare letter, which is the start of the use of high fidelity wraparound for aftercare purposes. Then you will see a bundled rate that will be released by DHCS that is currently in development. I cannot answer things about that because they are not developed yet. And then you will see high fidelity wraparound used for the immediate needs program in the new tiered rate structure. We also do not have all of the answers on that. We are working on them, but we do not have them yet. So I know there's a lot of like TBD, but there is a lot of TBD, and we are working constantly on trying to build out those answers and get to those places with all of the interested parties.
Yes, absolutely. And also, please lean into your interagency leadership team. Richard Connect also joined us for both prepping webinars, prepping for county approval and provider certification. If you would like any assistance into locating or building an ILT team, Richard Connect is your man. He is amazing. We have 8 minutes left. We're going to try very hard to get through all of the questions. And I do realize that we probably will not. However, we are adding these questions to our FAQs on our website. So if we did not get to your question today or in any other previous webinars, please go to our FAQ page and go through that, or join us at a TA session. And just want to be sure, show up, ask your question, and you can dip out or be a fly on the wall. We've had a lot of those as well. So Friday, 2:30, 2 to 3:30, links in the chat. And Tamara also dropped the high fidelity wraparound concept paper, and it is still open for public comment. I believe it closes on the 21st of August. So please take the opportunity to give the feedback. It'll be very important. Okay, This is the easy question. Now that the standards are out, what is the timeline to come into compliance and become certified?
So this is a multi-part question. The timeline for aftercare providers seeking immediate contracts to provide aftercare services is 1 year from the release of the letter, which was roughly July 18th, right? I think it came out, or 15th. I'm sorry. It came out on the 15th. It says the 8th. It came out on the 15th. I know that. It won't say it online, but we all know that's the date. Was actually emailed to all of you. So if you are seeking an immediate contract to provide aftercare services, you have a 1 year deadline to get certified. Counties have to contract with certified providers within 1 year. The portal, there, however, is open to all providers. We encourage and we support any providers in Wraparound who would like to get certified, even if you don't have an initial contract provide aftercare. If you provide adoption services and you want to achieve certification to demonstrate how you align to the standards, we welcome you. You do not have that same timeline. The portal will remain open forever. In fact, we have a recertification requirement. Every 3 years, agencies need to be recertified, and that's providers, not counties. And the portal will you'll be able to regenerate your old materials. We're not going to ask you to recreate everything. We will hold on to what you submitted, and you can update and provide updates rather than redoing everything. So this is a living portal that will always be open at any point in time. So should a new provider come in, should you start to work with a county and want a contract, and you need to get certification 2 years from now, that's fine. It will be available to you. So it is a 1 year and answer. It depends on the circumstances and the purposes that you are working towards.
Excellent. And this is why we invited Rebecca. We've all been told this is your webinar because she has been knee deep in these standards for years. And I don't remember for number 10.1, but Rebecca will. For standard 10.1, do providers always click NA, or is that just an option? I believe this was speaking to the counties. The counties were doing that and the providers did not have to. They could click. Is it only an option or county only?
Yeah. So if you're a provider, just click in NA. I think coming up with a leadership team similar to what the county does is actually just great practice to do at your organization. You might actually want to do some of those activities in that standard, but not at all required for certification. You can just click the NA. If you click the other boxes, we won't ding you. If you show us some stuff on that, we're not going to ding you on that, but truly not necessary.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm looking at the time too. I do see your questions coming in through the chat, and I know our team is trying to also vigorously answer those as we're going through our questions that were asked prior or previously. Do the high fidelity wraparound program have a description guide like the section 35 for intensive care services, ISFC, or with the standards, the agency has to create it? This is question 15 on the form, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm not off the top of my head familiar with the intensive foster care services section 35. I don't know how to speak for that, but for the portal and for certification and approval, we are asking you to upload your documentation. So the portal is structured to say, here's the standards, here's the check boxes. You don't need to create a form or something that shows us. You're clicking in the portal and you're typing into the portal directly and you're uploading your documentation. So if you want to create a cool grid that says this is how we meet and this is how it looks, cool, awesome, upload it. If you don't want to create a grid and you just want to tell us standard by standard, do that. You do have to talk to each standard. You cannot just say, here's a big grid and that's it, we're done, we're not going to fill out the portal. You do have to actually fill out the portal and go standard by standard. So you have flexibility in how you do that. The portal is our structure for certification and approval.
We have time for one more question. Danny, the issue with having different counties, having different programming is providers who serve multiple counties, very typical for FFAs. Will that be will be having different high fidelity wraparound contracts. This will be incredibly administratively burdensome. How does the state envision bringing those barriers and reducing the administrative barriers? This is question 16.
Yeah, we are working to try to reduce administrative barriers, and it is a statutory mandate in the TRS system for us to try to reduce mandatory barriers, but there is nothing that I can share at this time.
Thank you. I did see Lizzie put our emails in the chat. If you have any specific questions, burning desires, please email us at the resource center at ucdavis.edu, CalWrap certification at ucdavis.edu. You have your county wraparound coordinators at CDSS. So for county folks, please lean into your CDSS team. TA drop-in session is this Friday from 2 to 3:30. Please join us. Please go on the website. Everything that Rebecca was speaking to today, all of the resources Tamara was dropping are on the website. Go into our wraparound toolkit, click those yellow bars and tabs and see all of the amazing gold that is inside there. There's FAQs on the front of the portal page. So if you do not have access to get into the portal, a lot of those questions can be accessed on the front page as well. We're here to help. We want this to be as less anxiety provoking and cumbersome as possible. And I know it's going to be cumbersome. However, both our teams are here to support along the way. So please feel free to lean in. Catherine is asking for the county wraparound coordinator list. It's in that large resource document that Tamara's been dropping. All of those resources are in there, and it's also on our webpage. So hopefully we'll have time to do that. With that, it is 11 o'clock. Rebecca, I'm always awe-inspired when I see you present. Thank you for that. You filled my cup this morning. Happy to see all my friends and family today in the sandbox. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, folks. We'll see you at the next time. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.